Are you looking for more out of your life? Do you need ideas on how to start new businesses and how to move forward in your own personal life? Well, guess what? You have come to the right radio show. At You Can Overcome Anything podcast show, you will learn and hear from many people from all walks of life who are sharing their challenges, their stories, the habits, and the mind shifts they had to overcome to become who they are today. On top, you will get a chance to connect and see how you can overcome anything by networking and learning about your next move through this radio show. I present to you our great speakers at You Can Overcome Anything podcast show with your host, Cesar Espino. Hello there, and welcome back to another episode of You Can Overcome Anything podcast show. It is your host, Cesar Espino, and you can find me at www.cesarrespino.com. Today, I have a special guest. His name is Anton Gray. What's up, brother? How are you, man?
Cesar, what's going on, brother? Hey, listen, I'm amazing. Happy to be here, man. Honored to be here.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much for being here, and definitely I'm excited to have this conversation with you and just really bring a lot of value to the listeners and viewers of this podcast show. So Before we get going, I want to just kind of do a quick introduction so they can get to know you. So Anton is a former tech consultant, a military ops specialist, turned business launch and growth strategist, author, and speaker. Not to mention a dad of 4. He is on a mission to empower people to take back their freedom, build impact-driven business, and step into their greatness. Amazing. So definitely want to tap into that. Before we get going with that, though, tell me more about your childhood, your upbringing, and where you're originally from.
Awesome, man. Yeah, so I'm originally from Baltimore, Maryland. I still live in Baltimore, Maryland, but luckily I've had I'm a ex-military as well, so I got to travel the world and see some different places. So that was actually pretty cool. But man, my childhood was I say it was a pretty good childhood, man. I say that because I think that I'm blessed to have the childhood that I had being from Baltimore, Maryland, man. Sometimes it's Baltimore's a great city, but sometimes the inner city, it's like every city. There's some good to come out of it, and there's some bad. I know Baltimore is usually in the news for the bad. It's one of the cities that has a high murder rate and things like that. But luckily, I think that my childhood was great, man. My mom and dad were pretty good at keeping us busy. So I played sports all of my childhood, man. I played soccer, but it was cool too because unlike most. I think that I got to see a different side that maybe a lot of people don't get to see in their childhood. And that was that my parents were actually entrepreneurs. So when I was about, I think I was about 5, maybe 6 when they started, but they both had businesses. They owned barbershops and beauty salons throughout the area that we lived in. So it was cool to see, my parents do that and not necessarily go to, a job every single day. They went, although they kind of did, but it was their own. So I got to, see the ins and outs of what entrepreneurship looked like. And so that's, that's where like the entrepreneur bug bit me when I was a young kid. But, childhood was pretty good, man. I got to do some cool stuff. I played soccer and basketball and sports all the time. And, that's when I got to see my parents do their business. And my dad said, "Hey, kid, you want to work?" Right. And so like, that's where entrepreneurship started for me. Because my dad, and I tell this story, man. Let me know if I'm being long with it. I tell this story because my dad was actually my first boss, and I absolutely love my dad, but he sucked as a boss. Right?
Yeah.
And so, like, a lot of what I do now, I still kind of dated back to that. But he asked me, he said, "Hey, kid, you want to work?" And I figured, you know what? My days consisted of going to school, then going to soccer practice, and then going to the barbershop and hanging out there. So I was like, I'm gonna be here, why not? Right. And so
how old were you?
It was like I was about 8. I was about 8 or 9 at the time.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, I was like, I'm gonna be here all day anyway. Like that was where I spent my days, hanging out in the barbershop. And so I was like, cool. And I think the agreement was like $5 a day or something like that. Yeah. There every day. So I'm like, this is 25 easy bucks. I'll do it. Right. But my dad was either I don't know if he was just bad at math or he just didn't want to pay me, right? Because I on Fridays, the days would roll around. I'm like, all right, Dad, I did my days, I want my money. And sometimes either the money would come up short and not really equal out,
Yeah.
or or sometimes he'd say, well, this is a family business, kid. You're supposed to help out. I'm like, man, if this is the work world, I'm not sure if I want to be a part of it, man.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, that kind of left a bad taste in my mouth. It kind of pissed me off a little bit. I'm like, listen, I'm here. I got to make my money. I was a kid. Yeah. I had kid needs. Like I wanted candy.
I was going to say that you were looking forward to yeah, exactly.
Right. I wanted the reward that came with it. And so I was like, all right, dude, I gotta find a way to make my own money. And so I started doing odd end jobs for the barbers. And it started picking up like crazy. One of the biggest things that I did was kind of like Uber Eats before Uber Eats was out. Lunchtime would come around, especially on the weekends, and they'd have their schedules jam-packed where they couldn't go out to get their lunch. So I'm like, all right, I walk up and down. We had a bunch of sandwich shops like right next door and a few blocks down. I walk down the street, get your lunch, and I'll take orders. And so I learned that barbers sucked at math as well, right? Most barbers sucked at math because they give a 8-year-old kid a $10 bill for a $6 sandwich, or even sometimes $20 bill, because half the time all they had was cash, and say, keep the change. Those were my favorite 3
Wow,
words.
you're definitely making a lot more money than working for your dad.
Oh, yeah. I was like, Dad, you know what? You're fired. I've got a new job.
Yeah.
Right? This is my thing now. But yeah, that started adding up pretty quickly. But that's when I saw that if you were willing to kind of solve problems for people, you can make a lot of money. And that's kind of where the entrepreneur bug bit me, man, and it just stayed with me. But that's like my childhood in a nutshell, man.
No, you know what? I love that. I love two things to that. And maybe we'll take this in a different direction for a quick second. Even you growing up as a kid and just kind of stepping into that kind of or falling into the entrepreneurial journey because of your parents, and also doing sports, not getting involved with other things that didn't keep you busy and might have taken you to the wrong direction. Like you yourself with 4 kids, like how critical is that? Because I believe that right now in our society, whether you're working for somebody else or maybe you're just a brand new entrepreneur, sometimes we get hung up on the work itself and we forget about our kids. And so, you being a father of 4, you also playing sports and then kind of helping your dad, how impactful was that in terms of more or less your journey of maybe stepping into a negative space versus a positive space in your life?
Yeah, so I think that's a really good question, man. To be honest, I think, and I know we'll probably get to this, but in what I do now, and in even me coming back into entrepreneurship, was intentional with that in mind, right? Because the weird part, well, I guess not the weird part, but the part of the story is, because my parents were entrepreneurs, I think that they saw how challenging it was to run a business. So, like most parents, they want the best for us. So they steered me in the other direction. They steered me in the go to school, get a job direction, right? The typical, I guess, American dream type direction. And that's the direction that I took. But, throughout the years, that entrepreneur bug, even through middle school, high school, college, like that followed me. And I always kind of had something that I did for myself. But I got into the corporate world after graduating college and after, while in the military as well, and started climbing the corporate ladder. But the whole time there, I was like, man, this is weird, right? It feels weird. Like, I know I could be doing more. And, I made a conscious decision to make the jump into entrepreneurship. And my kids were a big part of that reason, right? Because I feel that, kids are impressionable. I think any behaviors that we have, it's learned somewhere along the lines, right? And we usually emulate our parents in some form or fashion. And so, my wife works a job. And so I was like, you know what? Me stepping into this and hopping into entrepreneurship gives them that split. It just gives them a different side and a different view. So that way, when they're old enough to make their own decision, they've seen both sides. Whereas, and I actually, man, I made a jump, and I will talk about this, but this was one of the scariest jumps ever. I went from a solid, salary, a strong 6-figure salary, to jumping into entrepreneurship, like sink or swim, right? And so it was definitely a challenge. But part of what I do intentionally every day is allow my kids to see the different sides of, whatever is considered making it, right? And so that's a really good question. It plays a part in my actions every day, and I always think about how what I'm doing is affecting my kids.
Yeah, no, I definitely love that, and I think that's part of that one thing that people need to consider if you actually have kids is be able to empower them to, like, and teach them and show them and be able to become an example of them, and not necessarily neglect them just because you're tired or you came from work and you don't want to put in the time to do whatever the case may be. And I see that oftentimes. And so that's definitely critical. The other thing that I love what you mentioned, and maybe I want to take that further, is, if you're willing to help solve other people's problems, then you can make money, right? And you were doing that by helping these different barbershops, help their problems of eating, right? And getting them food. So how does that apply to your journey now, the things that you're doing now? How have you seen that, helping other people from that perspective, and then at the end of the day, helping yourself?
Yeah, for sure. So I think that's critical, man. I think like that's the whole aura of entrepreneurship. Like at the core of entrepreneurship, it's people solving problems, right? Like think of everybody that we look up to, like even like the Elon Musk and the Gary Vaynerchuks and all of the other entrepreneurs that we look up to. They're solving problems for people, and I think that all of us have some type of ability to solve a problem for somebody, right? Like it's like the innate humanity in us to help people. And I think that that's what entrepreneurship is. So for me, one of the pieces that was missing in the corporate world was that kind of internal fulfillment, right? Because, even, like I said, it was just one of those things where you go in, you get a check, you do whatever you're going to do. You're helping in a small sense of the word. But for me, that internal fulfillment of being part of a bigger picture or helping somebody move past whatever struggles or reach a new level in their business, like that in and of itself helps me, right? Just because it's a totally different feeling. It's one feeling to complete a project at a job because you have to, right, to earn the check. But it's another thing that, even when I got started in my entrepreneurship journey, a lot of the stuff that I was doing it for free, right? But it was that internal fulfillment of being able to help people that moved me. And it still moves me each and every day in everything that I do, and helping, business owners expand their sales channels and their reach online so that they can serve more, sell more. Or on the coaching side, when I'm helping people launch and build businesses online and just taking something that seems complex and breaking it down into simpler terms and getting people moving step by step towards whatever it is that they're working towards. Like it's no other feeling like it, man. It's no other feeling like it.
Yeah. And that's actually something that I can relate to myself. And I'm sure that many entrepreneurs, when they go through that journey, is that at the end of the day, one of the things that I've done, a lot of things that I've done for myself, it became to that decision of, is it going to be a self-accomplishment? Am I going to feel good about the things that I'm doing, right? And if I'm not, then why am I even doing that? And I see that more so now, where before it wasn't the case. When I was working similar like you for corporate America, it's like, whether I felt good about it or not, I had to get it done. And it was like sometimes it just didn't, coincide with, the ideas or the things that I was going through. So I think that that's probably one of the biggest things that I've learned too, is that being an entrepreneur is not going to be always making the big bucks per se, right? Because the self accomplishment or the success or that comes in a different form. Is like the impact that you're making on other people. Like I've gotten messages from people that are like, what, I love your book. It has changed my life. And I'm like, wow, that's amazing. Like people are taking action, or I'm able to see that transformation. And I think that sometimes for me definitely speaks more volume than just, making that money or whatever the case may be. So,
totally agree.
Yeah, so that's awesome. Now, in terms of the military, what was the driving factor of you going and joining the military?
So the military, to be honest, man, I wasn't sure what I was going to do after high school. I knew I was going to go to college, but, my parents, by this point in high school, my parents had split. right? And so I think that had a major effect on me too. But my parents are split. But I knew, like I said, my mom really wanted me to go to college. There really wasn't anybody else in my family that, had went to college. And so like she was really pushing me towards that point. But I also knew that with college comes a hefty price tag, right? And so, and I started kind of researching and seeing people struggling to get through college. Like it's a grand idea, but when you get there, next thing you know, it's X amount of dollars per semester or per year. That can place a heavy burden on people. And I didn't want my mom to have to bear that herself. And so, in high school, I was in ROTC all through high school. And so that just kind of played into it. And that's when I started looking at, maybe the military is an avenue to be able to get through college. That's initially how I looked at it. And so that's what I did. After high school, I talked to a recruiter. We have recruiters coming like every week when you're in ROTC, right? Because they know you're already in that kind of discipline phase. You're starting to learn the operations of the military just as a coursework. So you're the perfect candidate. And so I actually went into the military during my senior year in high school. So I was actually doing reserve drill, and my time was actually starting. And then right after high school, I went away to basic training. And so that's kind of where my thought process was when I went to the military. I'm going to go in, I'm going to do X amount of years, I'm going to get through college so I can kind of check that off my list and have that accomplishment and make mom happy. But I actually ended up staying and doing, 15 years in the military.
Oh, wow.
Both the Army and the Air Force. And it was a great experience, man. I'm not going to lie. That was probably one of the best experiences of my life. Like you look back on things and you're like, would I have done different? I definitely not, just because of the opportunities that it afforded to me. And it was a good, be able to serve my community, serve my country and serve my community, man. So, and that's kind of bringing me back to the point that you were talking about, just about helping people. Mm-hmm. And so that was a big part of it.
Yeah. How long ago did you come out of the military?
I came out of the military in 2015. Got
you. And so right after that, is that when you kind of stepped into, getting into entrepreneurship, or you were still at that point working for corporate America?
I was still working for corporate America, but I was getting close to entrepreneurship. Like I said, man, once that entrepreneur bug bit me, I always kind of had something on the side. Yeah. And it was just one of those things where looking at it, I was like, I've got skills that I can monetize that might not be fully utilized at work, right? Just because of the positions that I was in. But you know what? I want to kind of rewind a little bit. Even getting out of the military, when I made the decision, a big part of my decision was my kids, right? Because I had young kids at the time, and it kind of struck a chord with me, even in the corporate world, but both the military and the corporate world, where there was one time when my son asked me, he was like, well, why aren't you coming to my game? And I was just like, well, dad has to go away. And he was just like, he couldn't comprehend it. He was like, listen, I don't care about where you're going. I've got a baseball game and you're not going to be there. What's going on? And so like, it was numerous things like that started to add up where I was just like, you know what, I'm got to make the decision. And so, like I said, my kids play a huge part into the decisions that I make. But, and my apologies, I kind of forgot what your question was.
No, I was just asking you about the coming out of the military and into the corporate world or becoming an entrepreneur.
Yep. So I was still in the corporate world when I got out of the military. And like I said, that was one of the main reasons getting out of the military, so I can coach and volunteer in my community with my kids, right? And so I was still in the corporate world, and when I was in the corporate world, it just kind of really started taking a toll on me. Like you said, each and every morning, I'm just like, whether I want to do this or whether I don't, that check is dependent on it. And so I had to drag myself out of bed each and every morning, man. But I started, one of the things that kind of woke me up to it was when I started developing stress and anxiety. And my doctor wanted me to get tested for depression. And I'm just like, I'm not getting tested for depression. Hell no. Like, you don't know me. I'm a happy-go-lucky dude. But I didn't really see the signs. And every morning having to drag myself out of bed, I started experiencing that. And for the past, for the last probably 3 years of my career, every morning when I'd go to work, I'd go to open my office door and I'd have this fit of anxiety just come over me, like to the point where, like, if anybody has ever almost been in a car accident to where you have that, oh crap, I almost just died kind of moment, to where your heart's racing and you're sweating, like that would happen to me every single morning going into work. And so, I would go to the doctors. I'm like, doc, you got to find something, because there's something going on with me. And they're just like, no, you're healthy, but it could be this. And like I said, once that kind of just woke me up to what the hell is, I'm usually never stressed. Why am I stressed? What is anxiety? Because I've never had that or experienced that, and I hate it. And like, what's going on? And so I started looking at the bigger picture and really diving deep, started to, dive internally to find out what was going on.
Yeah. I definitely want to know about the challenges that you had, besides obviously going through the anxiety and the stress, just the challenges in general, like leaving a very good paying job over 6 figures to really step into what a lot of times, although we as entrepreneurs might have a game plan, it really at that point, that paycheck depends on your actions, right? And so that's very scary. And so I want to understand and hear from you, what was your experience overall? Because perhaps people that are listening to us are thinking of, taking that leap of faith and jumping and doing that. Just they may not know how to go about doing it. So what's your experience?
Man, so my experience, to be honest, I don't know why it has kind of been in reverse. I think it's more scary for my wife than anybody. When I first made the jump, I definitely had the conversations and made sure that she was on board. But when I made the jump, to be honest, it was like a sigh of relief. It was really like a sigh of relief. Like, I don't know. And it's usually you would think it would be the other way around, to where I'm just like, oh crap, what have I done? Like, I just cut off my main source of income. But for me, it was the other way around, man. Like, since I jumped into entrepreneurship, the stress has gone away. The anxiety has subsided. Not to say that everything's gravy, right? Like,
right. Yeah.
I've still, got ups and downs in my business, where some days I'm like, dude, this is awesome, I'm killing it. Other days I'm like, oh my gosh, who's hiring? Like, please take me back, right? And that happens every single day, even sometime in my business now. But it's a challenge, right? And I'd say to anybody that's looking to make the jump, definitely don't do like I did. I just said, screw it, just do it. And I jumped in, right? Some people are okay with that. But for me, like I said, it was more about my health and about my inner peace than anything. And so I'd say, if I were to rewind the tape a little bit, I probably have a better plan going into it, like full-fledged, knowing what needs to be done. Because that's one of the biggest challenge going in from the corporate world to entrepreneurship is, you become everything. When you sign up for it, you don't realize how many hats you have to wear, versus when you go to work, you usually just have to put on that one hat, right? You go in, your task, your assignments, whatever you got to do, and you've got 8 hours to check these things off your list, right? And then usually it's a list that has been assigned to you by your boss. When you're an entrepreneur, you've got to create the vision. You've got to make the list. You've got to check the things off the list. You've got to keep yourself on task. You've got to, and it's weird. It's like, it's that newfound freedom, to where you've got to learn to make sure that you're on task to move towards whatever the goal is. And you've got to make sure that goal is set, that you've set, is one that you're actually striving towards, right? Because it's easy to get distracted as an entrepreneur. And that's one of the biggest shifts that you've got to make. It's like a mind shift that you've got to make, is going from an employee mentality to an entrepreneur's mentality.
Yeah, and I can see how that can be very difficult. Did you ever talk yourself out of it? Did you ever have those little voices saying, Anton, what are you thinking? Like at any given point, did you get any of those, voices that we all have that tends to stop us from, reaching our potential or moving forward in anything, right? I mean, it could be in anything. In this case, being, jumping and taking that leap of faith. Yeah.
I think my inner voice probably does me more harm than good, right? Because my inner voice is definitely like, I'll probably listen, like if it's two voices on my shoulders, right? I probably listen to the one that says, screw that, just do it anyway, right?
Yeah.
But the good voice is on the side of my wife,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And so my wife will say, like, all right, so what's going on? Like she's great at keeping me on
Yeah.
task.
Yeah. Yeah.
But she's the one that kind of level sets it to where this voice is just like, dude, let's go for the moon, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
let's hop off this cliff, right? And I jump, and then you're just like, oh crap, what have you just done? Like, got the parachute, and the other voice is like, told you. But I didn't really have voices that talked me out of it. I think in the early stages, I probably questioned it a little bit, like, dude, was this really a good move? And one of the hardest parts too is your support system. Like I said, luckily my wife was a great support system, but everybody else thought I was absolutely nuts. Like, why are you've got everything that most people want. You've got a 6-figure job, big house, cars, like all of that stuff. And it was like, I say on the outside, I was a success, but I was an internal failure. Right. And so to everybody else looking in, they're just like, Anton's lost his mind. He's gone crazy. Who does that? Right. And I think that anybody jumping into entrepreneurship, and especially the people that really leave their job and exit out of the corporate world, got to realize, man, entrepreneurship isn't the norm. It's becoming more popularized now, and you're seeing it a lot more, but it usually isn't the norm. Most people go to get jobs, right? And so when you're doing something that's outside of the norm, there's always going to be opposition. You're always going to be viewed as the crazy one, and everybody's always going to wonder, like, what are you doing? Everybody's going right. Why are you going left? You can obviously see that this right path is where it's at, right? And so, you're going to feel that. You're going to feel that. And so for me, like I said, I had to block all of that out and understand that my support system and the only opinions that I really not necessarily cared about, but the only ones that really would move me were my kids and my wife. Now, if my wife says, listen, dude, you got to go back to work, then I'll definitely have to consider it a little bit more. That other voice is still like, screw it. Never going back. Right. But in those times, those are the things that I've got to take in consideration. But yeah, man, I think you're going to have your doubts. Like I told you, every day is up and down. Some days I'm just like, dude, you're killing it. Other days I'm just like, Anton, you're a fool. You're a failure. Why did you do what you did? Right. And so you're always going to have that, but you just kind of got to find something to ground yourself. Right. For me, I love motivational talks. I love my inner circle, the people that I hang with. I connect with people like Cesar, who's killing it in the entrepreneurship world, or that have that are in the same world. Right. Because listening to your podcast, and I know I had you on my podcast as well, hearing stories like yours motivate me. And it gives me that assurity that, dude, you're not crazy. Right. Like, it is possible. It's feasible for you to do it if you're willing to put in the work. And so that's one of the things that kind of keeps me going, is just surrounding myself with really good people that are in the same world, that understand the pain, that understand the challenge, that understand the climb. Because those are the ones that can reach back and kind of give you a hand, so you don't take too many missteps.
Yeah. And, along those lines, like, before I stepped into the entrepreneurship, I always had the idea of, I can do everything by myself. I don't need this person here. Don't need that person in there. I don't need to go to that networking event. They're just gonna, take my money, whatever, right? And a lot of times, people start thinking about those things. And now for me, it's like, I'm looking forward to going to those events, because I feel like it's like, in my opinion, church for entrepreneurs. You meet so many different great people. There's different people that you can find, either joint ventures or they can edify you, whatever the case may be. So what's your message with that? Because I do believe that, who you surround yourself with can definitely become a positive or negative outcome in your life, right? And so you talked a little bit about that. Let's take that a little bit further, though. Like, how critical is that for maybe perhaps not necessarily your success, just in general, your success with your business, with entrepreneurship?
For sure, man. I think networking, is everything. Networking is really everything. I think that, and I write it a little bit, in my book. I think that success isn't necessarily always about, what or the skill sets that you possess, but it's also in the relationships that you build, right? So kind of even taking it back to what we were talking about earlier, helping people, right? One of the biggest things of entrepreneurship, and like maybe it's my early lesson, right? If you solve problems for people, then that's kind of when the doors open up for you. So networking can be everything, and having a serve first mentality, right? So like I said, so even here's an example. So my podcast that I have, Peace of Mind, the Mindset Behind the Mission, that even started as an idea that almost got swept under the rug. But luckily, I was surrounded by a ton of great entrepreneurs at the time that I was learning from and that I was, masterminding with. And they said, dude, just do it. Like, don't sweep it under the rug. Here's what you can do. Here's some good ideas for your show. And, oh, by the way, I'll even help, right? I'll come on and so that's kind of how my show started, to where, like you were talking about, the inner thoughts. First, I was like, is this a shiny object? Is it actually pulling me away from the goal of what I'm trying to accomplish in my business? And then I was like, well, even if I start the show, man, I won't be able to get guests. Nobody will really come on the show, right? Yeah. Why would they come on the show? And so being surrounded by entrepreneurs due to the networking that I had done, they were just like, Anton, let's do it, right? And so just by me even running it past a few people, everybody I ran it past, next I had my first, I think it was like 11 guests booked out in a day.
Wow. Nice.
So that, but like to your point though, that's because of the people that I was surrounding myself with. Had it been on the other side of the coin and I ran it past people, it was like, dude, that's a dumb idea. Why would you ever do a podcast? Who's going to listen? Right. And that's just like, which inner voice are they going to feed into? Because we all have that inner voice, the one that's yay and the one that's nay. Right. Yeah. Luckily, I had a lot of people in my circle that agreed with the yay. If the other people would just like agreed with that negative voice in my head, right? That negative voice would have been like, see, I told you, nobody's going to listen. Nobody's going to come on your show. You're not going to be able to book guests. And it would have got swept under the rug. Now, here we are, a year and a half later, and I've done weekly episodes ever since and got to network with amazing entrepreneurs like yourself and have grown my network and have grown, opened myself up to different opportunities based on that, right? And so, like I said, that's just like an example of how it can go either way. And that I think the networking is incredibly important, and investing in yourself. Like you said, attending these events, man, I don't even go for the knowledge that's going to be on the stage anymore, right? I go for what's in the room, the people sitting next to me, because that networking is amazing.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more than you. I mean, I think the keynote speakers are definitely great. I just love also being part of the community and just bring the people that are going to be there, because you just never know, that could be, your next joint venture. It could be, something that is really going to help you by you helping them. Right.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your book. What's your book about? And give me a little bit about your book.
Sure. So my book is called Mind Reset. And so this was one of those things to where when I was getting started, a big part of my journey was personal development. When I was in that last 3 years in corporate, I went on a deep dive of personal development. I started reading about and studying all of the people that I saw as successful, and started really trying to dive into what makes them tick. What is it, right? And like I said, oftentimes, we all have excuses, and I had a bunch of them. Well, I don't have the time, and I don't know this, and I don't know that. And that's that inner voice. And so through my personal development journey, this really popped up. This was one of the things that stood out to me as the difference between somebody that has a 7-figure, 8-figure business versus somebody that's in corporate America. And it is their mindset, right? Like one of my favorite books is Secrets of the Millionaire Mind by T. Harv Eker. That was one of the books that just kind of kicked me in the butt and changed a lot of things for me. And so, when I wrote this book, I wrote it as a short read, just as I was going through my journey. And I wrote it as a 10-day transformation journey, really just to help people make small mindset shifts. Like each day is only 2 to 3 pages, a quick read to just spark some thought, right? Not even really teach people anything, but just kind of spark some thought and ask them and force them to dive deep and really ask themselves some deep questions, look themselves in the mirror and, talk about why they believe the things they believe, why they do the things that they do. And in this book, as you go through each of the days, it gives you some exercises, some questions at the end of each chapter to really ask yourself and just to shift your thought. Because for me, that was one of the biggest things. It wasn't that I was lacking skills. It wasn't I was lacking knowledge. I know that for a fact that anybody that works a job that's making, 50 grand or more a year, you've got a skill that's worth way more than what your job is ever willing to pay for you. If you're making that much money, then you have a 6 or 7 figure business in you regardless, right? But until you get past, like you said, that negative voice, it'll never happen. And so that's kind of what I wrote this book as, just like I said, a quick read to take people through each and every day, to just make some shifts, make a few small shifts and help them to really start getting the hell out of their own way and on their path to greatness is what I say with it, man.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So share a couple of things that you were doing through your own personal journey of self-development when it comes down to the mind, because I do know that that's so critical. Yeah, just aligning yourself and really making those changes, right? And just making those mind shifts are so critical that sometimes, like you said, they might be small, yet we tend to overlook those little items. So what are some of the things that you were doing to help you with that?
So one of the things that I did, I started to, I was mindful of what I was putting in my mind, right? I think that our minds are like fertile soil, right? You plant seeds and you water them, and whatever you plant in it will probably grow. But the thing is, your mind doesn't know the difference between good and bad, right? Between what you want and what you don't. And so I became incredibly mindful of what I was planting in my mind. So I started waking up every morning. And a lot of people say motivation is crap, but I'd listen to motivational videos. I'd read different books. Well, reading, I won't say, because I'm not the best reader, but audio books were like my thing, man. So I turned off the radio, I turned off the news, and I just started picking up different audio books, different motivational speakers. And I found the ones that really resonated with me, their speaking style. And I just let their messages just flow in, man, just because in those moments, like you said, when you have that doubt, when you're about to talk yourself out of it, I think that we usually go back to something that we've experienced, right? Or something in our subconscious, whether we realize it or not, that's either going to confirm our doubt, right? Or move us past that doubt. And so I was purposeful, just trying to put good stuff in, right? And so when you hear Les Brown and Jim Rohn, when you hear their voice in your head just saying, you got to be hungry, you can do it, you got to be ready to work. When that doubt creeps in, when you hit those struggle points, like for me, that I can turn on Les Brown and, that gets me pumped up. It gets me motivated again. Like, dude, you got this, right? It's almost like when I played high school football and I played soccer, and I would always listen to music before a game, and it would just put me in a different state, a different energy state. And so now motivational speaking has kind of been, I won't say replaced it, because I still go back to some jazz and everything when I'm super stressed and I got to come back down. But I've just been incredibly mindful of what I'm putting in. I think that, you get out what you put in. So be incredibly mindful of what you're actually putting in. Yeah.
No, I love that. And definitely I love Jim Rohn and Les Brown. And those are two of the people that I also listen to every day. And it's kind of creating these rituals. Tony Robbins talks about creating daily rituals, right? Or habits. Yeah. And I think that's, as an entrepreneur, or even if you're not actually, I think that's something that you should just, that should be part of the journey, part of embracing your journey and just doing that. Talking about embracing your journey, you talk about to embrace and enjoy the journey. I want you to elaborate a little bit more on that. What does that mean when you're talking about embrace and enjoy the journey?
When I say that, I think it's crucial and critical to embrace and enjoy the journey, because especially in today's world that we live in, with the internet, man, like the internet has a weird way of making things look all rainbows and butterflies. If you let the internet tell the story of entrepreneurship, it's rainbows, it's butterflies, it's laptops, Wi-Fi, and Lamborghinis, right? But and I think what that does is create like this sense of, I won't say entitlement, but almost like we just want it so quick and so fast, right? Because that's kind of what we see. It seems that way. It seems like everything's an overnight success. But behind every overnight success, the thing they forget to tell you is how long that damn night was, right?
Yeah.
And how many nights it took to get to that thing. And so that's why I say embrace and enjoy the journey, because, it's one thing to set a goal, but it's another thing that to actually move towards that goal. And so another funny story, I used to compete in physique competitions in the bodybuilding space. And this was where I kind of learned this. Like, each and every day I would have a diet that was freaking like ridiculous. Food with no taste, and I'd go to the gym and do workouts and just straight up kill my body, right? And it's easy to kind of get in the mindset to think, all right, well, I just ate healthy for a whole day. I just drank a ton of water. I just worked out, and I look in the mirror and I still don't see any changes, right? And so the journey in and of itself is, I think, that embracing it and understanding that in going through that process, the consistency and the discipline that you develop is part of that journey, right? To reach the end goal. And at that point, it was, just looking straight up shredded on the stage or whatever the case may be. But as you're going through, it becomes monotonous. Doing the things that you have to do, you might not see results right away, right? But each time you do it, it's a step in the right direction, moving towards it. And eventually, you'll start to see the results that you want to see. Entrepreneurship is the same, right? And like I said, the internet has a way that makes us think that we can click a few buttons and be successful the next day. Embrace and enjoy the journey and understand that each day is progress, right? And so even when you're setting your course of your day, when you're developing these habits, ask yourself, are these habits moving you to or away from your goal, right? And I think that the mission of each day should be to make a little bit of progress. Each and every day, make a little bit of progress, right? And like I said, it's going to suck. It's going to seem monotonous. It's going to seem boring. But just through consistent effort, that's how you make the progress that you want to see, right? And a little drip of water on stone is not going to do anything right away. But over time, that little drip of water can cut through any stone, right? And so that's why I tell people, man, you just got to embrace and enjoy the journey. Be okay with not seeing results right away. Be okay with the failure, because with any type of failure comes a lesson. I think everything is a lesson or a blessing, man. And sometimes both, right? So embrace that.
Yeah, no, I love that. Man, Anton, I'm having a definitely great conversation with you, and I would definitely go on forever, but I also respect your time. So before I let you go, I have a couple more questions for you. If people wanted to connect with you, where can they find you?
Sure. So really, they can just head over to my website, antongray.com. I'm on the social media platforms at that's IAM.agray. That's GRAY. They can connect with me there. They can message me on Facebook, but everything is on my website as well. And I've got some cool freebies. That's where people can go and find my book and get a copy of my book, all of that good stuff, right at antongray.com.
Awesome. And then talking about just the things you do now, how are you impacting the world or helping out people through your business? What is your business all about?
Sure. So my business is two-part. On one side, the coaching side, I help early entrepreneurs launch, build, and grow businesses online. So whatever it is, I help them kind of, make sense of what it is that they want to do, whether it's just looking to create an additional income stream as a side hustle, or really take a skill and build it into an online business to be able to make the jump. And then the second part is an agency. I work with service-based business owners to build them sales funnels and messenger marketing bots to enable them to expand their sales channel and expedite their sales process so that they can serve more and sell more. So that's the two parts of my business.
Awesome. So if you're an entrepreneur, definitely you got to reach out to Anton. He can definitely help you out in either on the coaching side or more tools to help your business. If we have listeners or viewers that are watching this, that they might be going through some sort of challenge, whatever the challenge that might be, what will be one advice among all the things you've told us already, one advice that they can do today to start overcoming that challenge?
I'd say, this might sound weird, but this is what I say. I say you've got to learn to doubt your doubts and believe your beliefs. We usually got it flipped around, right? I think that we usually believe in our doubts and we doubt our beliefs. We got these grand ideas and we got these visions of what we know we're capable of. But like you were mentioning earlier, Cesar, in that same breath, we talk ourselves right out of it by saying, but I don't know this, but I'm not sure about this. I'm not, and when we want everything to be crystal clear when getting started, take the first step, man. Doubt your doubts, believe your beliefs. If you think you can, guess what? You can. You're right. Right. But just be willing to take that first step, be willing to make that progress, and embrace and enjoy the journey, man.
Man, I gotta tell you, I love that. I never heard that. I like doubt your doubts and believe your beliefs. That's awesome. I love that, and definitely a good way to kind of end this. Is there anything else that you want to say to our listeners?
Go forth and prosper, man. I always end my show like this, if you don't mind. I tell people never settle, dream big, believe in those dreams, and go after them because your greatness awaits.
I love that. You guys got to check him out. His podcast is amazing, and definitely connect with Anton. So thank you so much for being here on the show. Really appreciate it.
Pleasure is mine, man. I'm honored. Thank you for having me.
Definitely. And for the rest of you guys, please make sure you check us out. Please subscribe, like, comment, and come out here and just give us your feedback. Really enjoy having you on the show. I'll see you at the next episode of You Can Overcome Anything podcast show. Bye.
Hi, I'm Cesar Espino, real estate investor, business coach, and consultant, and author of the book, You Can Overcome Anything, Even When the World Says No. My number is 424-501-6046. In my book, I talk about making the necessary changes to shift your mind for prosperity and certainty. Pick up your copy at Amazon. I also love helping families with their real estate and can purchase your house fast and all cash. Follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. My number is 424-501-6046.
Thank you for having me today. I am so glad you've tuned into this podcast. You can find me at your favorite podcast platform where you can like, subscribe, comment, and share. And to learn more about myself, my services, you can find me at www.cesarrespino.com, or you can also find me at your social media. Thanks for joining me, and I am looking forward to having you at the next episode. And know you truly can overcome anything.